Home Affairs Deputy Minister Njabulo Nzuza recently told Parliament that the department wanted to create an efficient department to serve all who seek its services. He also explained its vision to address transformation of South Africa's international migration policy. Now, a new white paper in this regard is in place. He added that the department also planned to establish the establishment of Border Management Authority, which will serve as a single entity under one command structure. The Deputy Minister joining us now in the studio to discuss this as more. Deputy Minister, good to see you.
Thank you, Thabo.
Work is underway, as you put it, to revamp the system. Why the focus on migration, and how do you think if we tighten up what happens at migration, this is going to help us in the economy?
What we want to do is to make it easy for people to visit South Africa, but make it secure such that undesirable people do not have access to the country. Those are people who will pose a security risk to the country in the form of terrorists and other flagged people. And as such, we are moving ahead with our e-visa regime, which is currently on a pilot stage. We have done functional testing, and by November, December, we should be seeing massive rollout of that particular program. What it will do, which is important, is that a person who wants to apply for a South African visa can go online, apply for a visa, and that visa comes through to our visa processing center. It is adjudicated on, and then it is approved. When it is approved, this is a key issue. It means a person no longer needs to go to our embassy and physically get a printout of the visa, but there will be a virtual visa that will be loaded into the system. When they board for South Africa, immediately will know that this person is coming to South Africa and they already have a virtual visa approved, which means it will then become a desirable tourist destination because we make it easy for people to access the country. But by doing so, we also enhance our risk in terms of assessment of passengers, because we are able to see anyone who boards a plane and that person is undesirable, right, and we are able to stop them.
So what do you say then to those who are looking at these policies that you're introducing, and particularly the EFF, Vuyani Pambo, accusing the departments, as far as your policies relating to foreign nationals, as being anti-African?
They are not anti-African. Let me tell you something. Here in South Africa, we do not have refugee camps. For anyone who comes here as an asylum seeker seeking to be a refugee, we do not say to them, go to a camp, stay there like in some of other areas they do, which means we are quite welcoming as a country. What we also don't do, we do not jail, people who we say are refugee seekers. We actually integrate them with our society. Do you know that a South African refugee, or a person who is a refugee in South Africa, actually has all the rights that a South African has, except for the right to vote? Do you then say that it's a discrimination against our African brothers? It's not a discrimination against our African brothers. All that we are saying is that everyone who's in the country must be in the country through a legal process and not come to South Africa in an illegal manner.
How do you balance those interests of what you're trying to do and the challenge that we're facing? 6.7 million people who are looking for work are actually unemployed. If we take that number up to those who have given up looking for work, it goes up to 10 million.
Well, actually, we're embarking on a project where we're going to improve our 6 land port of entries so that we move for ease of movement of people between the countries, and also to make sure that people who come into the country are legal people who are supposed to come through the country. We are also revamping our immigration systems in order to talk to our ability to see who is here illegally and who is here in a legal way. Obviously, we will also have a responsibility to move forward with enforcement, to inspectorate, go to where people who are illegal, and then we take them through our systems and we take them back to their countries.
And you've been calling for punitive measures, particularly against truck owners in KZN. How do you suggest that should be approached?
We have not just called for punitive measures. We've been implementing. In fact, we are now implementing roadblock systems where we go into some of these toll gates and we request people to give us permits, because if they are driving on our roads, they should have been allowed to have been driving on our roads. And those who are not supposed supposed to be. We then have to have a responsibility of extraditing them and taking them to their own countries.
And I'm sure
we're
you're
implementing
getting
it
resistance from NPOs, organizations like Syria who are not comfortable, particularly when it comes to the human rights element of how you treat foreign nationals in that regard.
We actually treat foreign nationals very well. That is beyond measure. As a department, we treat them very well, as I've explained to what we do. But we also have a responsibility to enforce the law. If we're going to make laws and then we don't enforce those laws, then it becomes a problem. So that is why we then enforce by making sure that we do those stop gaps in certain strategic areas, like we've been doing in KZN in terms of the toll gates. And we've been able to detect that some of the people who actually were driving our trucks are actually not supposed to have been there, and that's against the law. But another thing that we caution against is that employers must have appetite to employ right people with the right papers.
Yes.
Because
but with the right skills as well, because
with
there's
the
an
right skills as well, yes.
appetite that's moving towards
Obviously.
supplying of high skills into our economy, because that helps in job creation,
Yes.
but also in boosting the economy.
Obviously, if a person has a permit, it's because we will have done the assessment that that particular person has the required level of skills to actually be working in South Africa. So if they hire a person without a permit, it means they are breaking the law, which in turn means they are employing jobs that could have been done by South Africans, and we have developed that particular framework. In fact, we have one of the best, immigration systems in the world and in Africa. We anticipate that, yes, South Africa is a better place to live in. We have a lot of our African brothers coming through. All that we are saying is that they must come through in a legal manner.
Now you're moving into the e-space, and you mentioned a little bit earlier on the e-visa regime that you're introducing. How secure and how safe is that? What are the checks and balances in place there that somebody can't interfere with that system and make their way?
It's world-class systems. It's world-class systems. Look, we anticipate our problems that we have been having at Home Affairs have not been really about the system. They have been about connectivity and availability of data. And when we free the spectrum and are able to move towards a more digital environment, obviously those problems will be solved. But we are running world-class systems in terms of our checks and balances.
World-class systems, if they
Yes.
don't work, it's a problem. You recently visited the Home Affairs in Umgeni.
Yes.
And that is where people are saying half the time that thing is offline. And that's why you've got long queues. People have got to wait. At some point, they give up because the system is just not working.
Well, for us, we just came in, and what we are saying is that it's not about just looking at problems. It's about providing solutions to those problems. And that is why now we are talking about moving towards a digital environment so that we reduce the queues and we have more channel wherein people can be able to access Home Affairs whilst they sit in their own homes and be able to apply for services and no longer have to stand in long queues. Obviously, we had the modernization program, but what would have been modern 10 years ago can't be declared modern now. Yeah. Everything today is about data, accurate data, and then digital space. So that's the direction in which we want to take. So our visit there was really to say, what are the issues here so that we can provide solutions, not just to pop up and just go there and talk and talk.
How are you dealing with that issue? I mean, you've declared literally a fight against long queues, and this is not just a theme that you're saying, it's something that you're doing in practical terms.
Yes, obviously we are now improving our systems. That will be a game changer in terms of how we do our business. But as I've said, the model is such that if you want your ID or a reapplication of your ID, if a bank, for instance, is able to use your thumbprint to open an app in a bank, why don't we have the same app that is able to use your thumbprint? Because the banks themselves, they rely on our systems to be able to identify people. So ours is to take that advantage and then use it. Obviously, we're going to be meeting with management because we've only been there for about 2.5 months or so to then outlay how we're going to move forward. But the vision is already there. Some of the things that we're talking about are already in action.
Some of the challenges that you have to deal with are challenges of marriages that are fraudulent. And there are instances where people have been fraudulently married. You have annulled those marriages. But there are thousands others which you say the people actually went into them deliberately and you have not annulled them.
One of the biggest problems we have in the country around our immigration issues is that our citizens must also be educated. A person will come in, for instance, from another country to South Africa. They are then, on some instances, not all the instances, There are then, you know, sort of a remuneration that the person is given, and later on they then marry, and then they agree to marry, and they go to Home Affairs, they put in their fingerprints and everything else. Later on, you find that this person now says, no, 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 I'm now getting my family because I've got South African citizenship. Then you have those people then come in and say, no, 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 we were illegally married and so on, whereas they had taken consent. Yeah. But we do have records to say that, look, here are the records. No one could have taken your hand and forcefully placed it somewhere. It means you were in agreement with these people, with the person who actually wanted to come. That's a problem. That's a very serious problem. And we really discourage those kinds of marriages. We accept our African brothers, and anyone from the country can come to South Africa in a legal way, get married here, you know, they honor their kind of a bargain, but not enter into a fraudulent marriage that seeks to get that person citizenship. Then later on, the person says, that's fraudulent. It's not an honest kind of a marriage. And we must be able to talk about them and do not fear, you know, talking about them.
Deputy Minister, I'm going to let you go, but before I do, can I get your view on this development within your party? Previously, you are, of course, the SG of the ANC Youth League. You've said the last disbandment taught us a harsh lesson. It turned out to be a problem for the ANC. I'm not saying that former leaders of the ANC Youth League, Julius Malema and his cohorts, were correct or wrong, but we have learned from that, and I'm hoping that the ANC will take the right decision. And that right decision for you would have been not to disband the ANC Youth League. Well, the organization has decided.
But let me just explain something. The times we live in now are very litigious, which means, you know, members of the organization go to court and request certain. The term of office had come to an end. Unfortunately, we had inherited a huge amount of debts from the previous leadership, and that we were only made aware of them now. And as such, we could not be able to continue running with the situation as if it's normal, considering that courts had taken decisions. Yeah. Our time lapsed. After our time lapse, the ANC has taken a decision, and we hope that this decision will be the best. Yes, we are not friends of disbandments and all those things. We believe that people must be given space. But the litigious environment we found ourselves in brought questionability to the standing of the NEC that was then dissolved. Yeah. And the ANC had to take a decision. Unfortunately, it is now water under the bridge. It has time that has passed. We have done our best to make sure that we provide leadership to the ANC Youth League under very difficult circumstances. Right. We did everything. I, myself, sitting here, I know for a fact that I put in a lot of hours to the Youth League.
Let's leave
we
it
hope
there.
for the best for the Youth League.
Thank you so much, Deputy Minister, for coming through and affording us your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, Njabulo Nzuza.